Good morning, ladies. I wanted to follow up on my video from a few days ago where I talked about letting go of the why and why that was so important for me in the process of getting out of the overwhelm and really moving forward and getting back a handle on life, essentially, because special needs parenting is very, very overwhelming at times, right? A lot of the times, to be honest. So we have this list of specialists we got to see, and we have all these appointments to do, and we have school to fight with. If your child is school age, you get the IEP issues, you have services you're trying to get for them all the time. Then you have insurance matters to deal with because, we don't exactly have a whole lot of money laying around to cover all these different services our kids need. So we're constantly doing this juggling act. If you're just joining, let me know you can hear me okay. I had to be inside today. Too many lawnmowers outside. So we're doing this constant juggling act of appointments and specialists and phone calls to the DME company, and then we have to fight with the school district, and then we have to do the daily care in and out of itself is overwhelming enough for some of our kids, right? So letting go of the question why that I talked about a few days ago was step number one for me to get out of overwhelm. I was so busy looking for the answers, looking for why did this happen to me, why did this happen to my child, and then looking for the experts out in the field to find some sort of solution. A solution to my son's issues, a solution to his disorder, a way to fix things. And eventually it came down to maybe that isn't an answer. Maybe that isn't an answer of why this happened to us in the first place. It's just the way it is. So that was step number one for me to start to get out of the overwhelm a little bit and start to see a way to move forward. And then today I want to talk about step number two, and that was something that didn't just happen overnight either. It was something that I had to get comfortable with over time. It did have a lot to do with the research I did previously about my son's condition. So step number two for me was accepting that I'm the expert. And that was really hard to do because you had dealt with this overwhelming information of this diagnosis, and you're looking for the answers, you're looking for a cure, you're looking for the next treatment option that is out there to try to help your child, and you're hoping that somewhere along the line you meet somebody who knows more than you do and who can just tell you, okay, this is what you need to do, and then voila. And it was that realization that once I stopped looking for the why, I also realized that there isn't really another expert out there. I'm the expert on my child. So maybe my pulmonologist is his expert, he's an expert in his field. The cardiologist is an expert in his field. And you can go through the whole list of specialists in that case. But the point is, they don't know my child. I live with my child every single day. I know what makes him tick. I know what motivates him. I know the issues that he has day in, day out, whether there's an official diagnosis attached to that or not. I'm the expert on my child, and that comes with a lot of scary responsibility. Because if I'm the only one who's an expert on him, that means I have to make all the decisions. That means I'm the one who has to go up to the doctors and say, I hear you, I appreciate your opinion, but I don't think it's a good fit for my child. That's a really scary thing to do. That's not something that you just suddenly go up against, because most of us were raised with, they went to college, they went through all this trouble to get their medical degree, so they should know what they're dealing with. And even if you go to a specialist for your child's particular disorder, you in the end are still the expert. And that was really hard for me to swallow. I was hoping when we went and saw that one specialist that now I have answers, now I have a way to move forward, now I have a way of predicting the future even of what this life is going to be like for us as a family and for my son. and then to come back from it and say, okay, I've gained some information and I know a little bit more than what I did before, but in the end, I'm still the one who has to make the decision. That's a big burden to carry. And that is really, really scary. So that was step number 2 for me. I had to let go of the idea that somebody else could just come in and show me the way. I had to decide things on a case-by-case basis. I had to turn doctors away. They might have been the top doctor in that particular hospital, but it wasn't a good fit for our family, so I had to say, I'm sorry. I'm sure you're great at what you do, but your approach doesn't align with my approach on what I want for my child, not just from a medical perspective, but simply from a life perspective. And that's what it came down to for me in the end. Fast forward a year after I made this big aha moment happen, I had to decide, what do I actually want for him when he's 18? When he's potentially moving out and living his own life. And at this point, I don't even know if that's going to happen. He might be living with us forever based on his medical needs. I don't know what's going to happen. But I had to put myself in the position of, who do I want him to be from a personality standpoint? Who do I want him to be as a person, not as a medical case? Because the medical stuff you deal with as it happens. You make decisions whether you're going to go on that new medication or not. You make decisions when to do a certain procedure. You make decisions in the moment as they happen, because in that time frame, you're not thinking about it, you're acting based on instinct. And that is the best way to go with any of this. Your mom instinct hardly ever steers you in the wrong direction. But there will be people out there, the so-called experts, who like to lay the guilt trip on you. Well, if you're not doing X, Y, and Z, then it's a detriment to your child. So you take that information in when somebody says that to you, and you feel like you're doing something wrong. You know your instinct is telling you otherwise. You know your instinct is telling you, yeah, what that person suggested isn't really fitting for what my child needs. But because they put it in those words, and most of the time those words don't come directly. They're indirect hints at, well, if you don't do this, then this will happen. Right? I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. Give me a thumbs up if you've been in situations like that, because it happens to us all the time. The school district is really great at it. They'll give you the whole guilt trip of, if you don't do this, this, and this, and if he doesn't get therapy right now, then he's going to be screwed for the rest of his life. If you've been following me for a while, you know that we had to cut therapy out for Wyatt altogether. And it wasn't because I didn't believe in therapy. It wasn't because I didn't think it would have helped him. It was because he wasn't receptive to it. So it was a complete waste of our time and the therapist's time. I would have loved for a therapist to come in and work with him on speech, work with him on feeding issues we had. He wasn't receptive to it. He shut them down right off the bat. He wasn't interested in it at all. In fact, he would throw major meltdowns. So I had to make the call, because I'm the expert on my child, and say, I know therapy is the way we should be going, but at this moment in time, it's not working. And that's really scary to do. Because essentially you're then letting go of what you should be doing and stepping into the unknown. When we quit therapy, I had no idea how we were going to move forward. I had to simply trust my instinct and say, this is not working. I don't know what the alternative is at this point, but it's not working, so I can't keep doing this to him when he's totally shutting down. And the same with doctors, the same with the school. You are the expert. You know instinctively. You have to trust your instinct. When something isn't right, you have to be brave enough to speak up. And that takes a while. I get that. That's not something you suddenly, one day to the next, you went from not saying anything to speaking up about everything. It doesn't work that way, I know that. I know there are a lot of times when you go to a meeting of some sort or to an appointment and then you come home and after the fact you think, I should have spoken up, I should have said something. We all do it. But that was step number 2. That was the biggest turnaround where life for me started to feel possible again. Once I get rid of the guilt and the blame with asking why, I then had to really just take a step back and shut out all the outside noises, all the expert opinions, all the standard therapy plans, all the shoulds, and I had to sit back, look at my son, and see what he needs, see what he responds to. And it might be the complete opposite of what's available out there, so I might have to pave my own way. If you've been following me for a while, you also know we started signing with Wyatt because he wasn't responding to speech therapy, and we needed a way for him to communicate because he was passing out on me left and right every day because of that frustration, not being able to communicate. So there weren't any resources. There is no speech therapist in this county, in the neighboring counties, who is actually fluent at ASL. Which makes no sense to me whatsoever, but that's a whole nother story. But it was again one of those moments where I had to say, I'm the expert on this. I know this is what he needs. I have no idea how long it's going to take until he responds to it. And just for the record, he didn't sign back for 2 years. 2 entire years. I was learning to sign, practicing, incorporating it every day with him. But what I saw from day one, even though he didn't sign for 2 years, what I saw from day one was he responded to it. He understood what I said far better in sign language than he did in oral communication. And that's just one example. To this day, I don't know why that is. It might be some sort of auditory processing issue. I'm not sure. In the end, really, to me, it doesn't even matter. It's, again, the why. I don't really care about the why anymore. I just know what works for him and what doesn't, and I have to go with that. I have to follow his lead. And that means a lot of the time it's a very lonely road. It's having to really say no to all the advice that's out there and say, I'm going to trust my child more than I trust the experts. I'm going to trust myself more than I trust the so-called experts. And I'm not dodging these experts. They might be great in their field, like I said before. But you are the one who's living it every single day. You are the one who has to deal with it after the 1-hour appointment is over with. So only you can decide what is reasonable for you to incorporate. So if they're recommending, take therapy for example, if they're recommending 5 days a week, that's great, but is that feasible for you? What's the drawback if you actually commit to 5 therapy sessions a week? Because you have to drive there, right? Maybe you have other kids who you then either need to drag with you or find babysitters for. Not to mention the financial implications of this. And then at what point are you actually wearing your kid out more than actually helping them? So you have to make all these decisions, and it comes with practice. It comes with what I like to refer to is actually an autism book that I read a while back, because Wyatt not only has a trach and the vent, but he's also autistic. There was one key term in there called joining. And I know I've talked about this in my group before a while back, probably like back in May when I started the group, but really it comes down to letting go of the medical jargon for a minute and letting go of the developmental goals and the educational goals and the comparison of where he should be according to his current age, and simply playing with him. I know this sounds counterintuitive because you want to be proactive and you want to go ahead and you want to be ahead of the curve and give him the next treatment and give him the next therapy. And even in playing, us moms like to sneak in some little therapy approaches just to make sure we're getting a little bit more practice in, right? Does that sound familiar? Joining is all about letting go of all of that and being present with your child just the way they are. So for me, that came in handy with Wyatt from an autism perspective. He was throwing objects down the stairs. We have a 2-story house. And for months, we were trying to get him to stop it because ABA therapy approaches, you stop the behavior and you replace it with something else. And most of the time, there's a reward involved in that, right? To replace the behavior if they actually do it. That never sat right with me for some reason, and I could never put my finger on it why it never sat right with me. And then I read that book. It's called Autism Breakthrough, by the way, if you're interested. So we were out of options. We tried everything we were supposed to do, and nothing was working. In fact, he was doing it more than before. So essentially, the behavior issue that we had with him was getting worse. Not only was he throwing things off the top of the stairs, but he was also having major meltdowns when we told him no. Which I know any kid will do, but with autism, it's a whole nother level. So we were really at a point of, well, what do we do? Nothing we're supposed to do is working. We have to find a different way. And again, that meant we have to find our own way because we're the experts on our kid. So I give it a try. It's like, what the heck? We got nothing to lose. It can't get much worse than this other than resuscitating him every day because he's freaking out. So joining came down to Sorry, my connection keeps going out every now and then. I thought the same thing. I thought this was crazy. I thought, okay, we're trying to get our child to stop throwing things off the top of the stairs, so we're now going to go join him and do the same thing? That sounds a little insane. But, like I said, we had nothing to lose. He was already doing it. He was already having meltdowns every single day, and everything else we tried wasn't working. So why not? So we did the same thing, and we really just had to remind ourselves to let go of trying to fix it and just do it. Do it with him. And this amazing thing happened. At this point, just a little backstory, at this point he wasn't making much effort to communicate even non-verbally through facial expressions or anything like that. So we go up there and we start throwing things down the stairs with him. And suddenly he's actually coming up to us. He's making eye contact. He's getting excited that we're joining him in what he's doing without stopping him. And he starts handing us objects to throw. So in other words, he's allowing us to play with him. Whereas before, we were trying to stop him from doing what he was doing. It was eye-opening. I don't know how else to explain it. It was a connection that we never had with him before. And granted, the problem of throwing things down the stairs wasn't fixed at that point. But we now had a level of connection that wasn't there, and he was now trusting us to be a part of the game. And then as we became part of the game, now we were allowed to change the game a little bit. Now instead of throwing everything down the stairs, we only threw soft balls down the stairs. And then as it went on and on for weeks, this is not something that happens in a day either, so don't get your hopes up that much. We were able to redirect the game on his terms, not on our terms like ABA was teaching us. It wasn't about stopping the behavior and replacing it with something different. It was starting by doing exactly what he's doing and joining him with it to build that connection, to build that trust. And then eventually it led to, we're actually aiming the balls at a specific target. And through the course of that, he lost the fascination of throwing everything down the stairs. And that's any kid, right? If you tell them not to do something, heck, they're gonna do it even more. So it worked out more than we could have ever imagined. Not only did he not throw everything down the stairs anymore, we actually had a connection with him. We had eye contact. He was excited to play with somebody else. It doesn't get better than that when you're talking about autism. So just like the signing, we had to go our own way. Not because we were dead set on just being different, but because nothing else was working. And sometimes going your own path and trying something that nobody else has tried is exactly what you need to do. And for us, it came down to following Wyatt's lead. In the special needs world, it's all about always fixing our kids and fixing a problem and fixing their behavior and fixing the next meltdown. There's a reason why they're doing what they're doing. Maybe instead of trying to just stamp it out and fix it, we should actually try to figure out why they're doing it in the first place. So for Wyatt, he loved the motion, the arc an object makes to go down from the top of the stairs to the bottom floor. He loved the motion of it. It wasn't that he was trying to, in a negative term, get attention from us. He just loved the motion of it. And the second thing he loved was the sound it made when it hit the floor. We would have never known that if we didn't join him in that game in the first place. So, just like I said at the beginning of this video, you are the expert on your child. You need to sometimes just sit back and shut all the outside noises off and shut off all the shoulds. Follow their lead for a minute and see what happens. Maybe nothing will come out of it. Either way, you haven't lost anything. But maybe you actually find some things out that you didn't know before. Maybe you find out what motivates them, which you can then later on use to actually change the behavior. Maybe you can find out why they're having a meltdown every time. Maybe it's the noise, maybe it's the touch, maybe it's the color of the wall. It could be anything. You'll never know if you're always just trying to fix it. And you'll never know if you're always just trying to hunt down the next expert who can help you. You are the expert on your child. You know your child better than anyone else, no matter how many specialists you see, no matter how many treatments you follow, no matter how many therapist sessions you go to. You are the expert and you need to own it. I know it's scary and I know it's a lonely road. Just like none of the kids on the autism spectrum are the same, none of the kids with CCHS are the same. Those are the two main conditions that Wyatt has. No child is the same. I can name my 4 kids. None of them are the same. And the only way I can figure out what makes them tick, what makes them motivated, what makes them happy, what makes them angry is by spending individual time with each of them. Your special needs kid is no different. Despite the obstacles they face, they are no different. They just want to be seen. They just want to be heard. They just want somebody to be with them without expectations. So own that. It's okay to tell a therapist, you know what, I appreciate your recommendation of those 5 therapy sessions, but I think I can only commit to 2 a week. Because after all, he still needs to be a kid. Or maybe you say, I need to cut it down to 2 just because I can't handle anymore. I can't drive around everywhere every day. I need a break. That's okay too. It's okay to say that. It's okay to tell a doctor, you know what, I know you want to see us every 6 months just for a routine visit, but it's simply too much because we have 15 other specialists we see. Can we cut it down to once a year? But I'll give you an update through email or whatever at the 6-month mark. I'll call you if something comes up. There are always alternative ways to arrange the treatment. There's always alternative ways to deal with the doctors. Sometimes you have to let some perfectly good doctors go just because they don't match your personality, they don't match your parenting style, they don't match your goals for your child. It's okay. Even if you waited 6 months to get an appointment at this one therapy office, it's okay to have 2 sessions and say, you know what, this is not what I expected and this is not working. I know it's scary to walk away from that after working your way to that goal and hanging your hope on fantastic results and then it's not happening, but you didn't fail. You learned what doesn't work for you. And you just have to try a different path. So please, I hear it all the time from different support groups, different people I talk to all the time. You have to speak up. Nobody else is going to do it for you. If you know instinctively that something you're doing, whether it's therapies or specialists or tests, that needs to be changed, whether the duration needs to be changed, whether the scheduling needs to be changed, whether you need to cross something off the list altogether, or whether you need to delegate something else, you have to speak up. Nobody is going to do it for you. If you know something is not working for your child, you have to speak up. To take charge. And that is very scary, I get that.